Hi, everybody. So thanks for coming here. And this is going to be in terms about working with couples. And I just got to let me see everybody here. Okay, it gives me a little bit of a better view of people. So the theme of the evening is going to be listening. Most couples that come to me because they're struggling with communication. So communication is made up of two things, speaking and listening. So we're going to focus on the listening part tonight, okay? So I want you to consider for a moment that you as a human being don't just you're not a blank slate. You don't just listen and take everything. You actually listen for something. Now, I think I can give you an example of that. When election season comes by and everybody's talking about politics, have you noticed that people engage in conversations, if you listen to them, what they're actually filtering for or listening for are things like, do I agree with them? Do I disagree with this person? Do I trust this person? Maybe I don't trust this. Should I trust them? Are they telling the truth? Are they lying? Is this somebody I would rely on or not rely on? You have filters as a human being that listens for something. We are not blank slates. So let me give you another example. Anybody buy a new car recently or not so recently? An old car. Now here's the key here. You only see or hear what you're filtering for or listening for. If you're not listening for it or filtering for it, you don't see it. Those cars were there the whole time. They were always there, but we didn't see them because we weren't looking for them. We weren't filtering for them. So I want to just, before we leap into this whole thing, I want to have you watch a very short video. It's on YouTube. Maybe some of you have seen it. It's called It's Not About the Nail. Anybody seen that already? No, great. You're going to have a great time. It's hysterical. So this was a video that I'm told was created by a therapist to demonstrate the difficulties that men and women have speaking with each other. So we're going to use it sort of as a touchstone, because what happens is many times, most people, when they come to me, they talk about the frustration of not being able to communicate, and they have the experience of going like this.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't...
Try to see things my way.
So, it's obviously about the nail, right? I mean, you got to be an idiot to see it's not about the nail. And he says, let's get the nail out of there. She says, that, you know something? This is what you always do. You're always trying to fix things. When all I want you to do is listen to me. You go, no, I really think it's about the nail, because it's obviously about the nail. But not for her. Until finally he says, that must be really hard for you. And she goes, yes, he understands. And then she leans into him. And then, you know, she hits the head. It's very funny, right? So many times what happens is we've got two different types of communication going. So I'm gonna make this overly simplified. So consider that there's two types of communications. It's more sophisticated than this, but for the purpose of our talk, this is good enough. Consider this like digital communication which means more literal. And there's analog communication, which is more metaphorical. So if I was communicating in digital mode and I said to somebody, can you give me a hand? I mean, give me your hand, like that hand. And if I'm in analog and I mean it metaphorically, of course, we all understand, give me a hand to mean, can you help me out here? And many times that's what happens with a couple. They end up talking like this. And what happens is you get frustrated, you feel misunderstood, you feel isolated, you feel alone, you feel like there's a distance between the two of you. And eventually you start to get resentful, and then that stacks up. And that's a real problem. So what I'm going to talk to you about tonight is, and if you have some paper, you might want to jot down some notes for yourself, because I want you to come away with something of value from tonight that you can actually use. You can actually put it into action with each other, or at least you'll see something you hadn't seen before. So what I want to do is walk you through one of the things I do with couples, so you can start to see inside of what it's like to create a model of communication, because I'm going to redefine communication for you. Now, the things I'm going to talk about with you, this is not for the office. This is not for the workspace. This is for in an intimate relationship. Okay? All right. So what I do is I ask people to come up with something that's going to be like an example of something out of their daily life. So if it were me, for example, I would say something like, I'm at my desk and I've been working on this project for about 3 weeks and I'm about to end it, coming near to the end of it. And my boss comes and he drops a file 2 inches thick on my desk. And he says, you got to stop what you're doing. You got to handle this for me. And I said, wait a minute, what are you talking about? I'm in the middle of this project. I'm just about to finish it. He says, no, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You got to stop this. And I say to him, well, I don't know if I want to stop it. So what I do is have one person who actually tells the story, and then I have the other person be a listener. But I have them start to listen for something specific. Remember, you don't just listen. You listen for something. You already are listening for something. I'm just going to have you start to get coached into listening for something specific. So the first thing I ask them to listen for is the storyline. The actual facts of what's going on. And where people get caught up is some people start to get so attached to listening to the storyline that they want to stick with that. So I had a couple that started with me once. This was a couple actually had a 20-year difference. He was from America, she was from China. She was Chinese. She spoke English, but it was pretty rough. And so they had communication difficulties, they had cultural difficulties, they had a lot of different things going on there. And before they started with me, sometimes people will write paragraphs, just to get me informed, let me know what's going on. They wrote 4 pages showing me what was wrong with the other person. They even it was like a lawyer's brief. These people would have been really good attorneys, I think. They had a whole proof set up. And they even copied and pasted parts of their emails to show me how bad the other person was and how right they were about it. And that's the default listening of most of us when we start to fight and get into the difficult times with each other. We default into being right. We listen for, we look for, we filter for what made us right. Of course, if you're making yourself right, who's wrong? The other one, right? The only trouble with that communication is that there's no love down that tunnel. The only thing available down that tunnel is being right. That's all you get down that tunnel. So now let's go back to how I'm working with people. So I asked the first person, the person who's listening, to give back the storyline. So that would go something like, Harvey, you've been working, you're at your desk, 3 o'clock Friday afternoon. You've been working on this project for about 3 weeks, getting close to the end. Your boss comes and drops a file 2 inches thick on the desk. And it gives me the story back, right? So, very good. You actually heard the story. Very nice. Now I have the speaker tell the story again, but this time the person who's listening, I asked them to just listen for the emotions, the feelings, that's going on in the speaker. So if you went to my story, you would say something like, you were surprised, you were annoyed, and maybe even a bit irritated. At which point you kind of feel it, like you go, yeah, that's right. Like you actually got what was going on with me in my world. And you start to see people's heads nod like this, like, yeah, that's what it's like for me. Then I have them do it one more time, the same story all over again. But this time I ask the listener to only listen to what's the commitment in the background or the positive intent of the speaker. So it's for me with my story, you'd be listening for Harvey's, you've got this commitment to finish your work. Like if you take a job on, you really want to get it done and do a good job at it. Can you hear that in the background? It's a little tough to hear. You really got to sort of stretch for it. But when you link into that, when you start listening for the commitment or the positive intent of your partner, what you'll start to see is this. When you get it, of course. That takes a little coaching sometimes, but when they hear it, you can almost hear like, yeah, that's right. And here's the real question. I ask them, now that we've done this, level 1, we're the story, level 2, the emotions, level 3 with what you're committed to, which one left you feeling either understood or that the other person actually got you? You know what I mean by that? Like they actually got who you are. They really got a sense of you. Without any exception, everybody chooses the second or third level. Nobody says, when they gave the story back to me, I felt really understood. And what happens in that moment, did you notice when, going back to it's not about the nail, when he finally went to her level and he said, that's really hard for you? And she goes, yes. And you could just see her whole body going, he finally understands me. And she leans into him, because that's what happens. People start to move closer to each other because they have the experience of feeling understood, of feeling gotten. So now let's see what happened here. We took a difficult topic, because what we end up doing is taking the stuff that people fight about, the stuff that you never really resolve, that just kept getting pushed aside. You kind of sort of resolve it, but never does. And it comes around again and again and again. We take that stuff. And I have people fight in the session with me because I want them to bring that stuff here and now. And if they can't hold on to it, believe me, they remember it. It's not so far away. It's real easy to get it back again. And so they do that. They really bring real life, because that's what life is in a couple. When everything's great, it's great. But when it's difficult, it's really not, it's not a lot of fun. And people want to have love back. So I asked them, when you felt understood, did you feel more distant, the same, or did you feel a movement closer to each other? And without exception, everybody said, well, I felt closer. I said, oh, interesting. You mean the same topic that always drives you apart from each other, now you felt a little closer? Yeah. Then I asked the speaker, did the other person actually get you? And they go, well, yeah. Then I asked the listener, and it's a little strange way to speak, but follow me if you can. Did the other person get that you actually got them? Did you follow that? And with the right coach, and then they go, yeah. And then I tell them, that's communication. See, we think communication is when the words flowing back and forth, and when nothing happens and the other person's not getting it. You know what most of us do? We say the words again louder. Like, if I raise my voice, maybe it'll get through. And so when we change the way you're listening, what you're actually listening for, your brain actually starts to develop a new neural pathway. Now, at the end, let me tell you a story about what happened. I had a couple when they came to me, and they started with me March 1st. They came to me, both of them had been arrested for domestic violence. Him first, 2 months before, and she went to jail like the week before, and she was going to court, and part of the deal was you better see a therapist. And they're like, yeah, I guess we better do something. And she was from Latin America, he was from Iran, and they were both very passionate people. And when they get into it, they got into it. And so they were trying to break this pattern, because the pattern would escalate out of control pretty fast. So I coached them in how to this communication model, and we started working with it. And they had an argument about who was supposed to take out the garbage pail. You get this? Right. This is real life. This is what we argue about, right? This is real stuff. And he was boiling over. I talk to you, you don't pay attention to what I say, you never listen to me, you just never pay attention to anything I say, you discount it all the time. And I stopped her and I said, when you're listening to him, ignore the story. All I want you to listen for is his emotions. And she turns to him and says, you're really hurt, because it seems like I don't listen to you at all. Now you got to get the scene. This guy was pumped up. I don't think he was going to slug her, but he was getting there. All of a sudden, like this, all the energy just drained out of him. And he went like this. Yeah, that's right. And then the tears started to well up, because she actually got what it was like for him to be that frustrated. But what was really going on was that he felt hurt and insignificant in his wife's eyes. Now they were actually communicating on the same. 3 minutes later, they were crying and hugging each other in their arms, because they finally had some communication. They were going to talk about the garbage pail, for the next 4 days. See, the listening will let you hear what you didn't hear before. Most people, when they're fighting about stuff, you're not even fighting about what you think you're fighting about. The trick is to start listening, to alter your listening so you start to hear what's actually going on here. And when you actually start to talk about what's really going on, that's when those issues that never get resolved, they finally get flattened out to where there's nothing left of it. If you start to realize the point of us having this conversation is to create connection with each other, because that's what we want. When I ask people, when they come to me, I ask them, what do you want? And they always start off telling me what they don't want. Well, I don't want to have these fights anymore. I don't want to be a misunderstanding anymore. I don't want to have these poor communication. I don't want. I say, okay, that's what you don't want. What do you want? Well, I want things to be a little more pleasant. Okay, and if things are pleasant, then what? Well, then we'd get along better. If you got along better, then what would you have? Well, we'd have a nice time with each other. And then what would you have? Well, then I guess it would be nice in the house. And if we're nice in the house, then what would be possible for you? And they go, like love? Oh. And then I asked the other one, and they got a different version of this. And they end up in the same place. So, oh, you both want the same thing. So the trick is to shift why we're having the conversation, so that over time, the same conversation that was associated with pain, because it always turned out terribly, now becomes associated to pleasure, because I make sure they reward each other when they actually have success, because you want to teach your brain, ooh, that was nice. And over time, you build a new neural pathway, so that over time you start to get the idea that, if we have a difficult conversation, it came out good last time. Okay, that feels different. And your body starts to relax. Because when you go into those difficult conversations, you go into survival, and in survival, it's fight or flight. That's all that's there. There is nothing else going on except that. But if you have some successes, your brain starts to go, you know what? That wasn't so bad. So to answer your question more specifically, it's a skill. And with repetition, you build the skill. It's really as simple as that.
Yeah.
Let's introduce another idea here. There's something called human needs psychology, which is the model that I use. And it was developed by Tony Robbins and Chloe Madonis. And the model says that there are 6 human needs, not wants, needs. That's like drinking water and breathing air kind of need. And very briefly, they're certainty, to have security, stability, predictability, uncertainty, like variety in your life, some spontaneity, some surprises, some variance, some challenges you have to adjust to. You have to have some sense of significance, like you feel important, you feel life's meaningful, you feel you're worthy, you're part of something. And you have to have some love or at least connection with other human beings. Those are the basic needs. The 2 more spiritual needs are they have to feel some growth in life, like I'm accomplishing, I'm becoming more of myself, I'm growing. And the most spiritual need of all is a need to contribute to another or to give of yourself to an organization that you feel is worthy. But the 4 needs are very basic. When couples are fighting, check this out. When they're fighting with each other, where's your attention riveted? Isn't it riveted on the other person? Well, really? Is that what you think? Well, you always do that, you know. All that. You're really connected, actually. It's not pleasant, but it is connection. As a matter of fact, it's probably a lot of significance too. And you can get significance in a positive way, like being the star performer at work, or you can get it in a negative way, like going out and pulling a gun on somebody. You pull that gun on somebody, and let me tell you something, you're very significant right then and there. And you probably get a lot of certainty, which is one of the 4 basic needs, because when you fight with your mate, you pretty much know how it goes. Because it pretty much goes that way for the most part all the time. See, you're actually busy when you're doing that fighting part, you're busy meeting those needs. Most people get 3 needs met in a fight. So what we want to do is we want to focus. What you're actually trying to get is connected, significant, and certainty. You're just using a real poor vehicle to do it. But you do get that. So what we do is we want to replace it with a better way to get it. Like saying to the person, it really hurt. I see it hurt you when I said that. I'm sorry. In that moment, you get real connection. And you feel sick. People today I was working with, the guy started off saying, I feel insignificant when you put me down. And she heard how much it hurt him. She said, wow, that really hurts you. I never noticed that before. His whole body changed. It's like, he said, how's that feel to have her say that? Now I feel like I mean something to her. He got his significance now. Anyway, it gives you a little bit of it. I'm just giving you a little sense. There's a ways. I have my ways. Nothing up my sleeves.